Hi guys, welcome back to Liv's Vivas. Sorry this is so late. This is week 6 Viva. Sorry Sarah, I'm way behind. I have them written, I just need to film them. So this week, probably today, you're gonna get like 500 videos, but it's fine. Okay, so week 6. Week 6 question was, what were the political implications of the Enlightenment? Let's start with this. Let's start with some little bit of a background with the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was this time period where it kind of shifted our view of the nature of seeing a direct reflection of God's interaction with humanity to more like established laws that God kind of sent to us. But it also fundamentally independent of his constant interaction. Yeah, so it's kind of like, it kind of doesn't really set these, it gives us more laws than direct revelation, I guess. The Enlightenment changes its political power during this time period. Within the monarchy, it shifts from absolute to reliant on predetermined laws, such as written or unwritten constitutions. So it becomes more of law, again, more laws-based versus who is in charge of that time, during that time. The idea of government becomes this idea of a social contract and new perspectives on the separation of church and state. And we also have the origins of civilizations. Also during this time period, a lot of things are really enrooted and investigated through the scientific method and that kind of lens. So although the Enlightenment is seen as a revolution in philosophy that transformed Europe and America's worldview on religion and politics, the Enlightenment's transition from traditionalism to rationalism completely remade European political philosophy and practice. And the 3 implications that we're going to be talking about today are: it reformed the entire political philosophy, it impacted the European perspective on colonial enterprise, and it led to the American and French Revolution. So, if we dive into our first implication on how the Enlightenment really changed Europe's political philosophy, is that it really just changed the entire political philosophy during this time period. During the Middle Ages, we know that politics were kind of rooted in tradition and rational thought. We can see this through Aristotle, who believed that humans were political beings, and then Plato, who also agreed with Aristotle, but he kind of shows this through his Republic, the desire that humans have for justice and understanding. So St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas, that's what Hogan said. He creates this new political system. So how does he do this? Let's talk a little bit about this. So he leads this to the development of political philosophy of the Enlightenment. And again, as I said before, he kind of used the scientific method. We also have Thomas Hobbes, who was an early Enlightenment philosopher who wanted to really understand the nature of politics. And he used the scientific method too. So Hobbes, he says that he wanted the science of politics was based on passion, specifically fear. This fear led to natural rights of self-preservation, and this fear becomes the basis for Hobbes' thoughts. So he really just believes that everything is just, the more fear you have, the more political power you have, more control you have, which is an interesting way to view things, especially today during this crazy time of life. And he writes this poem. It's called The Life of Mr. Thomas Hobbes of Mulberry. And it says, quote, "For fame had rumored that fleet at sea would canvass our nation's catastrophe. And hereupon it was my mother dear did bring forth twins at once, both me and fear. For this my country's foes ire did hate, with calm peace of am my muses associate," end quote. So he loved the passion of fear. As we see this kind of way of thinking in the political system, we also can see it in the economic system, in the economic thought. So Adam Smith, who we've kind of heard about, was a British economist and philosopher. And he wanted to explain the laws of the economic system. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So he believed that the laws were self-interest, and they were that was the driving force behind any complex economic exchange. And he believed that humans' desire to preserve something led to the formation of the political system designed to protect that thing. So he kind of believed that these two systems were connected. He believed humans at their core were individualistic creatures, and he believed the Enlightenment, or the egalitarianism, was the belief that all humans are equal and equal opportunities emerged during this time and began to shape the nature of the modern government. So his views on ethics there was kind of two views during this time period, one being Catholicism and one being utilitarianism. So the Catholicism was kind of the former belief, and it was really just rationalizing things, and that was the driving force behind a decision that you were to make was to rationalize it. And utilitarianism believed that the decisions should be made with possible outcomes at hand. So the difference was just kind of like Catholicism was like, nope, this is what's going to happen, so this is what we should do. And utilitarianism was taking in different accounts, different, scenarios coming up to make their decision. So utilitarianism played a huge role in the British colonialism, which is our second point. Look at that. So if we dive on into our second implication, that the Enlightenment really remade the European political philosophy, is that it impacted European perspective on colonial enterprise. So the Enlightenment promoted self-confidence, which affected human interaction with each other. The self-confidence led to European superiority, and it also their critique of previous ideas of the European society. So I think in class we talked about how when America kind of broke away from Europe and England, they were kind of, obviously upset about that. And so it was kind of like going through a bad breakup. And like sometimes when you go through a bad breakup, you like really work out and like get stronger and like focus on yourself and like get there. So that's kind of what Europe did. They had all this self-confidence after breaking up with America. And so they were bosses. Sorry, that's not true. So whatever. They were then kind of critiquing them past ideas that they had because they were like, idiots. So anyways, the Enlightenment thought sought to examine the intro between foreign and European culture as a source of chaos and change. So we can also see this through books that we read last year. What is it called? Heart of Darkness. That they kind of believed that they had the only right way, and they were trying to dominate cultures and take over different cultures just because they thought they had the right way, as where some cultures didn't want that. So this leads to the question whether or not a multicultural world promotes more morality. Cook. I don't know. Cook says, quote, "What is still more to our shame as civilized Christians, we branch their morals already to prone to vice, and we introduce among them wants and perhaps disease which they never before knew, and which serve only to disturb and that happy tranquility which they and their forefathers enjoyed," end quote. So Cook was saying that, introducing different kind of civilizations and cultures can be kind of dangerous because you don't know what you're introducing, and you might disturb the happiness of their tranquility that they had. So that, I don't know, it was kind of an interesting question to think about, whether this was moral or not moral, or good idea or bad idea. So if we look at this example, I'm so sorry. I need to get coffee or something. Hogan? Just kidding. James, so if we look at the example of James Mill, who is a Scottish philosopher, he influenced lots of utilitarian philosophy. The history of British India began writing in 1806. The fundamental in the formation of divisions of progress and civilization expanding. Is this the tea thing? I think this is the tea thing. I can't remember if I learned this tea thing in U.S. history or this history class, but India, England wanted tea. They were big tea drinkers, and the only way they could get their tea was from China. So they were dependent on China, and China was able to tax the tea tremendously. So Europe and England was like, we need a new way to get this tea. So they were trying to get the tea down to India, and then they were able to get the tea from India because they were connected. So Mills describes, Mills, he was this philosopher, and he, knew all this stuff or whatever. And he wrote this book, and he describes the culture of India, was indeed in need of historical development and maturity before being allowed to participate in representational government. So they thought that the Indians? How do you say that? Indians? No. Indians? Maybe that's right. I feel like that's not right. But they thought the Indians were too savage to be represented in government, which is kind of sad. Where did this go? I have cards all over here now. Okay, so our third implication on why the European political philosophy, really was remade during this time period is that it led to the American and French Revolution. Okay, I swear that's the last time I'm yawning. Okay, so there was a lot of revolutionary moments happening during this time period within America and France. They were encouraged by the spread of the Enlightenment ideas and everyday people in addition to the intellectuals of society. So America and France were large bodies of people, and they were designed to establish they wanted to design new government systems based on the ideas of the Enlightenment. We see influential figures during this kind of come out of this stage and using the Enlightenment thought, as John Locke, who is the 17th century Englishman, and he refined the nature of government. His view on human self-interest could be utilized to avoid tyranny. The second The second treatyism of government identified the basis of legitimate government. He believed that government was to be powered by the people, that the government's role was to protect the natural rights, and that the government could be overthrown if they failed to protect these natural rights. So he was very influential. We also had Benjamin Franklin, who his worldview was he loved science, he loved the science experiment, and the interest of the non-academics transformed the Enlightenment greatly. He influenced and exemplified the expansion of the Enlightenment thought to America. And he also just really used the scientific method to prove what he was saying and kind of, use that. And our third person that kind of really was influenced by the Enlightenment was Thomas Jefferson. And he wrote an essay to the first Continental Congress that addressed slavery, and he added a lot of Enlightenment criticism of unlawful authority. So Thomas Jefferson actually says in his essay, this is a quote from his essay, quote, "The abolishment of domestic slavery is the great object of desire in those colonies," end quote. So this way of thinking really just transformed a lot of political issues that were happening during this time period, and even after the time period, with slavery and America just starting off as a country, and France's future and everything like that. So although the Enlightenment is seen as a revolution in philosophy that transformed Europe and America's worldview on religion and politics, the Enlightenment transitioned from traditionalism to rationalism, and it completely remade the European political philosophy and practice. Again, my three implications were that it reformed the entirety of the political philosophy, it impacted the European perspective on its colonial enterprise, and it led to the American and French Revolution. Thanks, Sarah.